Teresa Lewis was put to death by lethal injection for hiring someone to kill her husband and her stepson.
But rather mercy, the same mercy that God has continues to give me.
Having someone tell me that you're guilty of a crime that I know that I was never, ever there.
Her fingers put the baby inside her coat and went out the door and got in her vehicle and drove off.
Body that I had been with for almost 6 years.
I wasn't expecting it to burn him. What it's like.
I'm sure. Oh, gosh.
Unveiling the chilling tales of the darkest souls, witness the stories of the ugliest women on death row, where horror and justice collide in an eerie symphony of twisted fate. Number 15. Teresa Lewis. Teresa Lewis, a name associated with controversy and capital punishment, found herself at the center of a highly debated case. As the only woman on ending row in Virginia, Lewis's story attracted significant attention due to her physical appearance and the crime she committed. The article aims to provide an unbiased account of Teresa Lewis's case, focusing on her background, crimes, legal proceedings, and the ethical questions raised by her conviction. Teresa Lewis was born on April 26, 1969 in Danville, Virginia. Throughout her life, she faced various challenges, including a limited education and a troubled personal life. Her low self-esteem and susceptibility to manipulation made her an easy target for individuals seeking to exploit her vulnerability. It is essential to recognize that evaluating someone solely on their physical appearance is an unjust approach that fails to consider the complexities of their character. In 2002, Teresa Lewis orchestrated a plot to slay her husband, Julian Lewis, and her stepson, Charles Lewis. She enlisted the help of Matthew Schallenberger, a 25-year-old man with a history of mental health issues, and Rodney Fuller, a 19-year-old acquaintance. The motive behind the slays was primarily financial gain, as Teresa stood to benefit from her husband's life insurance policy.
The death penalty after hiring two men to kill her husband and stepson in 2002, killing of family members. Now, as you mentioned, Teresa is out of options tonight.
Teresa Lewis was put to death by lethal injection for hiring someone to kill her husband and her stepson.
Of shoplifting. A canine also brought in to assist in the search for a possible weapon.
To kill her husband and stepson. The murders happened in 2002.
Under investigation, that prompted our two Fairfax County police officers to charge their firearms.
Police say they don't know if the suspect had a weapon.
Scheduled to die by injection on Thursday. She will be just the 12th woman executed. Lewis pleaded guilty in 2003. In a request for clemency,
he only has an IQ of 72, just 2 points above the legal minimum for execution in Virginia.
On the fateful day of October 30th, 2002, Schallenberger and Fuller entered the Lewis's residence and shot Julian and Charles multiple times, slaying them. The hired hitmen were apprehended soon after the crime, leading to the discovery of Teresa's involvement. She was arrested, charged with capital slay, and subsequently tried in court. During the trial, it was revealed that Teresa Lewis had manipulated Schallenberger and Fuller by exploiting their vulnerabilities. She offered physical favors and promised them a share of the life insurance money in exchange for their cooperation in the slayings. The prosecution argued that Teresa's actions demonstrated premeditation and a clear intent to commit slay. Teresa Lewis's case gave rise to significant ethical debates surrounding capital punishment and the treatment of individuals on ending row. Critics pointed out that her low intelligence and susceptibility to manipulation made her a less culpable offender, deserving of mercy rather than the ending penalty. They argued that her role in the crime seemed more like that of an accomplice rather than the mastermind, and her actions were heavily influenced by the manipulation of others. Moreover, many raised concerns about the gender disparity in sentencing. While Teresa was sentenced to demise, her male accomplices received life sentences. Critics argued that this highlighted an inherent bias in the justice system and raised questions about fairness and equality in capital punishment cases. The labeling of Teresa Lewis as, quote, the ugliest woman on ending row also drew criticism. This focus on her physical appearance detracted from the gravity of the crimes committed and perpetuated harmful stereotypes. Critics emphasize the importance of focusing on the ethical dimensions of the case and the fundamental principles of justice, regardless of physical appearance. The case of Teresa Lewis remains a complex and controversial topic, intertwining questions of justice, capital punishment, and societal biases. While her appearance may have garnered significant media attention, it is crucial to approach this case with a comprehensive understanding of the events and the ethical issues at play. Number 14. Tiffany Cole. Tiffany Cole, born on December 3, 1981, is an American woman often labeled as the ugliest woman. Her involvement in a high-profile slaying for hire case has placed her on Ending Row in Florida. Her case has attracted significant media attention and raised ethical and legal questions regarding her role and culpability in the crime. Now, in 2005, Cole, along with 3 co-conspirators, planned and executed a meticulously calculated abduction and slaying plot. The target was Cole's former housemate, Carolyn Carla Bagley, and her husband, Reggie. Cole had become familiar with the Bagleys' home and their financial situation, which motivated her involvement in the scheme. On the evening of July 8, 2005, Cole, along with her accomplices, abducted the Bagleys from their home in Jacksonville, Florida, at gunpoint. The couple was bound with duct tape, placed in the trunk of their car, and driven to a remote location in Georgia. There, they were buried alive in a pre-dug grave. The motive behind the crime was financial gain. Cole and her co-conspirators planned to steal the Bagleys' assets, including their car and bank accounts. They believed that by eliminating the couple, they could assume their identities and access their funds. Cole's role in the planning and finale of the crime has been a subject of scrutiny. The prosecution argued that she played an active role in the abduction, transportation, and burial of the victims. Witness testimony and evidence, including cell phone records and financial transactions, implicated Cole as a key participant in the murder-for-hire plot. In 2007, Cole was found guilty of first-degree slaying and several other charges, including armed robbery and kidnapping. She was sentenced to demise, marking her as one of the youngest women on Ending Row in the state of Florida. Since her conviction, Cole has filed multiple appeals, contesting the validity of her trial and the appropriateness of the ending penalty in her case. Her defense team has raised concerns about the adequacy of her legal representation, potential juror bias, and the reliability of witness testimonies. The case of Tiffany Cole has sparked debates about the morality and effectiveness of capital punishment, as well as the dynamics of manipulation and coercion within criminal enterprises. It has also raised questions about the degree of individual responsibility in cases involving multiple perpetrators. While the legal proceedings continue, the impact of Cole's actions on the Bagley family cannot be understated. The brutal and premeditated nature of the crime has left a lasting impact on the victims' loved ones, who have had to grapple with the loss and trauma caused by Cole's involvement. Overall, Tiffany Cole's case serves as a reminder of the profound consequences of criminal acts and the complex issues surrounding capital punishment. It highlights the need for a thorough examination of evidence, a fair legal process, and a thoughtful consideration of the ethical implications involved in cases that involve the ultimate penalty of demise.
But rather mercy, the same mercy that God has continues to give me.
It's a big local story that we've been following since 2005. The Florida Supreme Court has thrown
community every step of the way.
A neighbor tells family that she remembers seeing a strange car.
The shovels and crime scene photos at trial. The 3 were convicted in separate trials.
I believe that there are many more people that I can reach out to with God's guidance and your mercy.
Something that's now unconstitutional after a Supreme Court ruling last year that found death penalty decisions.
Number 13. Linda Carty. Linda Carty, born on October 5, 1958, is a British national who became one of the most notable women on Ending Row in the United States. Her case has drawn international attention and raised concerns about the fairness of the criminal justice system. Carty's involvement in a crime dates all the way back to May 16, 2001 in Houston, Texas. She was accused of orchestrating a plot to kidnap and slay her neighbor, Joanna Rodriguez, in order to steal her newborn baby. Carty, along with 3 accomplices, invaded Rodriguez's apartment, bound her, abducted her and the baby. Tragically, Rodriguez was suffocated with a plastic bag and left to die in the trunk of a car. However, the baby was ultimately rescued unharmed. Carty's trial and subsequent conviction have been highly controversial. The prosecution argued that she masterminded the whole crime and played a central role in the abduction and slaying. Carty maintains her innocence throughout the proceedings, claiming that she was framed and wrongfully convicted. One of the key issues in Carty's case was the inadequate legal representation she received during her trial. Her defense team was accused of providing ineffective counsel, failing to present crucial evidence, and not adequately challenging the prosecution's case. Additionally, concerns were raised regarding the reliability and credibility of the prosecution's key witnesses. Carty's sentencing also drew criticism. She was sentenced to demise in 2002, making her one of the few British nationals on ending row in the United States. Her case has sparked international outrage and calls for clemency, with advocates arguing that she did not receive a fair trial and highlighting the potential miscarriage of justice. Efforts to overturn Carty's conviction and secure a new trial have been ongoing. Appeals and petitions have been filed highlighting the flaws in her original trial and emphasizing the need for further examination of the evidence. Supporters and human rights organizations have rallied behind her cause, raising awareness about potential issues of racial bias, inadequate legal representation, and the use of the ending penalty. The case of Linda Carty serves as a striking example of the complexities and controversies surrounding the criminal justice system, particularly in ending penalty cases. It underscores the importance of upholding due process, ensuring fair trials, and considering the potential impact of inadequate legal representation on the outcome of a case.
That's the only reason I'm fighting, because if I had done this, I would have taken my punishment. But for us to communicate, I either got too close or someone in this case, So yeah, I know in my heart I didn't do it, but I don't have the resources.
Yeah, that's what the news said.
That's what the news gave. Right.
That's what they said that was in.
Having someone tell me that you're guilty of a crime that I know that I was never, ever there.
She owned, and the mother's body was found in another car.
I was supposed to put the sting on. They actually turned around and placed, I see.
Number 12. Lisa Montgomery. Lisa Montgomery, born on February 27, 1968, gained infamy for her involvement in a highly disturbing crime that shocked the nation. The case of Lisa Montgomery revolves around the brutal slaying of Bobby Jo Stinnett, a pregnant woman, in December of 2004. In a premeditated act, Montgomery made contact with Stinnett under the pretense of being interested in purchasing a puppy. Using this ruse, she gained access to Stinnett's home in Skidmore, Missouri. Once inside, Montgomery attacked Stinnett, strangled her, and then proceeded to perform a crude cesarean section to forcibly remove the unborn child from the victim's womb. Montgomery then abducted the baby, intending to pass her off as her own child. The shocking and gruesome nature of the crime captured national attention, leading to extensive media coverage. Montgomery's trial delved into her mental state and history of severe mental illness. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and dissociative identity disorder. The defense argued that her mental illnesses, combined with a history of childhood trauma, contributed to her diminished capacity and impaired judgment. Following a lengthy legal process, Montgomery was found guilty of federal kidnapping resulting in demise. In 2007, she was sentenced to demise. Her case sparked significant debates and discussions surrounding the ending penalty, mental illness, and the treatment of women in the criminal justice system. Advocates for mental health reform argue that Montgomery's severe psychiatric conditions should have been taken into account during her trial and sentencing. It is worth noting that the case of Lisa Montgomery garnered attention from various human rights organizations, mental health advocates, and opponents of the ending penalty, who questioned the appropriateness of imposing capital punishment on individuals with severe mental illness.
Lisa strangled Bobby Jo, then took steps to remove her.
Between her fingers, put the baby inside her coat, and went out the door and got in her vehicle and drove off.
Number 11. Brock Marie Rodiers. Brock Marie Rodier spent 12 years on Ending Row in California for her involvement in a horrific crime. Alongside her boyfriend Omar Tyree Hutchinson and a female friend, they devised a plan to lure two men, aged 22 and 28, into a hotel room with the intention of robbing them. Once inside the room, Rodiers and her accomplices brandished guns, forcing the victims to undress before tying them up. In a truly gruesome act, they proceeded to physically attack and strangle the helpless men. Rodiers, in particular, took an active role in carrying out these heinous crimes, using women's lingerie and electric cables as instruments of torture. Interestingly, the prosecution chose not to pursue the ending penalty for Rodiers' two accomplices, as they primarily participated by threatening the victims and aiding in disposing of the bodies. Instead, Rodiers was held primarily responsible for the acts committed during this gruesome ordeal. Number 10. Wanda Jean Allen. Wanda Jean Allen, born on August 17, 1959 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, emerged as a central figure in the ongoing debates surrounding the ending penalty in the United States. Her case captured national attention as she became the first black woman to be executed since the reinstatement of the ending penalty in 1976. Unfortunately, she was also unfairly labeled as the ugliest woman on Ending Row, a derogatory term used to refer to her due to the nature of her crimes. Allen's life was marked by a challenging upbringing and persistent struggles with her mental health. Tragically, on December 11, 1981, during a heated argument in an Oklahoma City parking lot, she fatally shot her longtime partner, Gloria Leathers. Their relationship was characterized by volatility and violence, factors that ultimately led to the devastating outcome. In 1982, Allen was arrested, tried, and found guilty of first-degree slaying. She was handed a life sentence without the possibility of parole. However, her defense team contended that her intellectual deficiencies and significant mental health issues should have been taken into account considering during the trial advocating for her release. They argued that her limited cognitive abilities and impaired judgment hindered her full comprehension of the gravity of her actions. Despite numerous appeals, Allen's ending was scheduled for January 11, 2001. Her case attracted the attention of activists, human rights organizations, and opponents of the ending penalty, who believed that carrying out the ending would be a violation of her constitutional rights. Wanda Jean Allen was ultimately executed by lethal injection at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester, Oklahoma. Her case ignited intense debates surrounding the ending of individuals with intellectual disabilities and mental health challenges. It also sparked discussions regarding appropriate penalties for those whose impaired decision-making capabilities contribute to acts of violence, while shedding light on the racial and gender disparities prevalent within the criminal justice system. The case of Wanda Jean Allen serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of considering a person's mental health and cognitive capacities when determining suitable punishments within the criminal justice system. It underscores the complexity and intricacies surrounding the ending penalty and prompts reflection on the broader issues at stake.
One police expert concluded that Pettis's bruises and powder burns proved that Allen...
Dear Lord, give Wanda Jean Allen the words to say, the words that you want her to...
Allen had pistol whipped her before shooting her in the head. Still, Wanda Jean Allen pled guilty.
I can do it.
Her sentence first, and then I'll give plenty of time for you.
Daughter should have been here with them today for the holidays. Both our families are missing us.
People talk about finding faith in prison.
Of years, it has brought a lot of people together to forgive others in order to be forgiven, and for him to guide and direct my life.
Do you believe that God can save you?
Yes.
Number 9. Tanya Nelson. Tanya Jamie Nelson is considered one of the ugliest women due to her heinous crimes convicted on February 16, 2010 for the brutal slaying of Ha Jade Smith and her daughter Annie DeVoe. The motive behind these shocking slayings was revenge. Nelson, hailing from Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina, had enlisted the help of Smith and DeVoe in an attempt to win back her ex-lover. However, when they failed to achieve the desired outcome, Nelson's anger and frustration took a sinister turn. On April 21, 2005, Nelson and her accomplice, 55-year-old Philippe Zamora, traveled across the country to the home of Smith and DeVoe in Little Saigon, Westminster, California. Under the pretext of visiting and having her fortune told, Nelson gained entry into the victim's residence. Unbeknownst to Smith and DeVoe, this visit would be their last. Armed with knives obtained from the kitchen, Nelson mercilessly attacked her victims. Smith was knifed multiple times in the head, face, neck, shoulders, and hands. Left to bleed to demise on the kitchen floor, she met a tragic end. Meanwhile, DeVoe was left in the laundry room, her head positioned in the hallway, and she too bled to demise from multiple knife wounds to her head, face, and neck. To cover their tracks, Nelson and Zamora attempted to wash the bloody knives and then went to Walmart to buy paint. Returning to the victim's home, they poured white paint on Smith and DeVoe, and Zamora covered DeVoe's face with a black shirt. The gruesome discovery was made the following day when a concerned friend contacted the Westminster Police Department, reporting their inability to reach Smith and requesting a welfare check. Upon arrival, the police were confronted with a scene of unimaginable horror. Despite the gruesome nature of the crime, Nelson displayed audacity by returning to Orange County for a shopping spree using the victim's credit cards. This reckless move ultimately led to her arrest. On May 30, 2005, Nelson was apprehended at the Santa Ana Holiday Inn, found in possession of the stolen credit cards, identification cards, and designer luggage belonging to the victims. Nelson's partner in crime, Philippe Zamora, was arrested on June 1, 2005 at his North Carolina residence. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree slaying and was sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. At Nelson's trial, Zamora testified against her, providing damning evidence of her involvement. On April 23, 2010, Tanya Nelson was sentenced to demise for her crimes. She currently resides on Ending Row at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, where she awaits the ultimate punishment for her monstrous actions.
Up there in heaven right now, watching as justice prevails for Paul Fahey's despicable actions.
Objection outside the scope of this witness's expertise.
I hope you sit and waste away for the rest of your days. My mother will never hear her son's voice.
Sir. Members of the jury. Mr. Nelson? Mr. Nelson.
Taken from this world. In closing, to every single person in this courtroom today.
Are we clear that you're going to stop talking? I need a verbal.
Number 8. Kathy Surinana. Kathy Surinana and her husband Raul Surinana were sentenced to demise for their heinous crimes involving the passing away of Ricky and Conrad. The brothers suffered from a troubled upbringing, marked by neglect, abuse, and a drug-addicted mother. Under the care of Kathy and Raul, they experienced severe physical misuse. Despite reports, the authorities failed to take appropriate action. Conrad was found slayed and Ricky died from his injuries. Kathy and Raul were arrested and convicted of first-degree slaying. While Kathy claimed battered wife syndrome and Raul admitted to attacking the brothers, their demises were deemed intentional. Both were sentenced to expiry and remain on California's Ending Row. The case sheds light on the failures of the system and the profound suffering endured by Ricky and Conrad. Number 7. Judy Buenoano. Judy Buenoano, formerly known as Judias Welty, was an American woman whose heinous crimes in the 1980s earned her the reputation as one of the ugliest women on Ending Row. Her involvement in the slayings of her family members and romantic partners shocked the nation, as she resorted to a variety of cruel methods such as poisoning, explosives, and drowning to carry out her wicked deeds. In 1984, Buenoano's true nature was exposed when she was convicted of first-degree slaying and the tragic demise of her own son, Michael. The court recognizes her malicious intent and sentenced her to the ultimate punishment, demise. On March 30th, 1998, Buenoano faced her fate as she was put down by the electric chair at Florida State Prison. It was a befitting end for someone so morally repugnant. What makes Buenoano truly despicable is her cold demeanor and lack of remorse. As she uttered no final words before her ending, she left the world with a chilling silence, a testament to her heartless character. Her case captured public attention due to the gruesome nature of her crimes and the extraordinary means of her ending. Judy Buenoano's name will forever be associated with ugliness, not only in her physical appearance, but also in the depravity of her actions. Her presence on Ending Row serves as a reminder of the depths of human wickedness and the need for justice to prevail. Her crimes and the manner of her ending leave an indelible mark on the annals of criminal history. Number 6. Christina Riggs. Christina Riggs was an American woman convicted of a highly publicized crime involving the tragic slaying of her 2 young children. Born on January 23, 1971 in Arkansas, Riggs had a troubled background that played a significant role in the events that unfolded. Riggs grew up in a challenging family environment characterized by substance abuse, domestic violence, and instability. She faced physical abuse during her early years and grappled with ongoing mental health issues throughout her life. Riggs received diagnoses of depression, anxiety, and borderline personality disorder, seeking treatment and medication to address her conditions. On November 4, 1997, Riggs committed a heartbreaking act that forever altered her life and the lives of her children. Overwhelmed by her circumstances, Riggs tragically smothered her 5-year-old son Justin using a plastic bag. She then turned her attention to her 2-year-old daughter Shelby and also suffocated her. Following the unimaginable slayings, Riggs made a failed suicide attempt by consuming various medications. She left behind a note expressing her intentions and detailing her struggles, including financial difficulties and fears of losing custody of her children due to her mental health challenges. Riggs was discovered and promptly rushed to the hospital, where she'd received treatment for the overdose. After her recovery, she was arrested and charged with capital slaying. During the trial, Riggs's defense team argued that she was suffering from severe depression and psychosis at the time of the slayings. They contended that her mental state impaired her judgment and contributed to her actions. However, the prosecution maintained that Riggs was fully aware of her deeds and sought the ending penalty. In 1998, Christina Riggs was found guilty of capital assassination and sentenced to demise. Her case received significant media attention, sparking discussions surrounding mental health, maternal filicide, and the application of the ending penalty. On May 2, 2000, Riggs was executed by lethal injection at the Cummins Unit, a maximum security prison in Arkansas. Her final words before her ending reflected remorse and love for her family, particularly her sister Frances, who had been a steadfast supporter throughout the legal proceedings. The case of Christina Riggs serves as a tragic illustration of the complex interplay between mental illness, personal circumstances, and individual accountability. Her crime and subsequent ending shed light on the difficult decisions faced by the legal system when dealing with individuals struggling with mental health issues, as well as the profound impact such cases have on the families involved.
I wasn't expecting it to burn him. Mama, after I laid down, what it's like.
I'm sure. Oh, gosh.
He did. I used to pillow and suffocate amitriptyline. And he just kind of, whined, Mama. I stopped on the way home and cleaned out my checking account to give my mom the money.
Number 5. Emilia Carr. Emilia Carr is an American woman who gained infamy for her involvement in a heinous crime that led to her being sentenced to demise in the state of Florida. Born on February 10, 1984, Carr's case has attracted significant media attention due to the brutal nature of the crime and the shocking details surrounding her actions. In February of 2009, Carr, along with her boyfriend Joshua Fulham, orchestrated a plan to rob and slay Heather Strong, Carr's ex-boyfriend's wife. The motive behind the crime was believed to be financial gain, as Carr and Fulham hoped to acquire Strong's assets and life insurance policy. The ending-style slaying took place in Marion County, Florida. Carr and Fulham lured Strong to a remote location under the pretense of discussing marital issues. Once there, Carr and Fulham attacked Strong, bound her with zip ties, and suffocated her with a plastic bag. They then buried her body in a shallow grave. The investigation into Strong's disappearance led authorities to Carr and Fulham, who were subsequently arrested. During the trial, Carr's defense team argued that she had acted under the influence and control of Fulham, portraying her as a vulnerable and manipulated individual. However, the prosecution presented evidence suggesting Carr's active participation and willingness in planning and carrying out the assassination. In 2010, Carr was found guilty of first-degree slaying, kidnapping, and armed robbery. She was sentenced to demise, making her one of the few women on ending row in the state of Florida. Carr's case has raised important questions about the nature of coercion and manipulation in criminal acts. The dynamics between Carr and Fulham, as well as the extent of Carr's agency and culpability, have been points of contention and debate. Some argue that Carr's vulnerable state and the influence of her abusive relationship with Fulham played a significant role in her actions, while others contend that she willingly participated in the planning and ending of the crime. Since her conviction, Carr has filed appeals, challenging the validity of her trial and the appropriateness of the ending penalty. Her defense has raised concerns about the adequacy of her legal representation and the potential impact of her traumatic upbringing on her actions. The case of Emilia Carr serves as a reminder of the devastating consequences that can arise from individuals' choices and actions. It also underscores the complex issues surrounding criminal responsibility, particularly in cases involving manipulation, coercion, and unmannerly relationships. While Carr awaits the outcome of her appeals, the impact of her crime on the family and loved ones of Heather Strong cannot be overstated. The loss and trauma inflicted by Carr's actions have left a lasting impact on those affected, highlighting the profound ripple effects of violent crimes. Overall, Emilia Carr's case raises important discussions about the nature of personal responsibility, the dynamics of offensive relationships, and the ethical considerations surrounding the ending penalty in the criminal justice system. Number 4. Margie Velma Barfield. Margie Velma Barfield, also known as Velma Barfield, was an American serial slayer who was born on October 29, 1932 in South Carolina, United States. Her crimes in the 1970s gained notoriety, leading her to being dubbed a serial slayer. Barfield's criminal activities began in the late 1960s when she started stealing prescription drugs, driven by her addiction to amphetamines and other substances. However, it was her later crimes that garnered widespread attention and shocked the public. Between 1974 and 1978, Barfield committed a series of poisonings, targeting several individuals, including family members and acquaintances. Her weapon of choice was arsenic, which she used to carry out her lifeless acts. Her first victim was her own mother, Dolly Edwards, whom she poisoned with arsenic-laced tea. Subsequently, Barfield targeted her two husbands, Stuart Taylor and Jennings Barfield, as well as her fiancé, Reverend Dwight Moore. Barfield's motives for these slayings varied. She poisoned her victims to collect life insurance money or to cover up thefts she had committed. Some accounts suggest that she derived pleasure from the control and power she had over her victims' lives, finding satisfaction in their suffering. In 1978, Barfield's crimes were uncovered during an investigation into the demise of Dolly Edwards, which revealed the presence of arsenic in her system. Initially, Barfield denied the charges during her trial, but she later confessed to the slayings. She expressed remorse for her actions and attributed her behavior to her drug addiction. Barfield was found guilty of one slaying, was sentenced to demise in 1979. Her ending by lethal injection on November 2, 1984 in Raleigh, North Carolina marked the first time a woman was put to demise in the United States since the reinstatement of the ending penalty in 1976.
Body that I had been with for almost 6 years.
She also admitted poisoning 3 other people, including her mother.
I wish that I could take every bit of hurt on myself for the hurt that I've caused so many people. Years of a drug nightmare, of not knowing where you are or what you've done.
Number 3. Michelle Lynn Mishwad. On June 8, 1990, Michelle Lynn, age 43 in 2002, and her former lover, James Anthony DeVagio, age 42, were found guilty of heinous crimes including kidnapping, physical attack, and first-degree assassination. The tragic events unfolded on December 2, 1997, when the duo abducted 22-year-old Vanessa Leigh Simpson from a Pleasanton Street. They imprisoned her inside their green Dodge Caravan, which was equipped with hooks and ropes, turning it into a chamber of horror. Throughout the journey to South Lake Tahoe, Vanessa was subjected to relentless torture. She was forced to wear a rubber ball gag and was strangled with nylon after enduring unspeakable physical abuse. Finally, her lifeless body was callously discarded on a snowy embankment. The trial presented damning evidence that convinced the jury of the defendant's guilt. It was revealed that the pair had used modified curling irons as instruments of physical torture against Vanessa while she was restrained inside the van. On May 6, 2002, the former couple was rightfully convicted of first-degree homicide, with additional circumstances of slaying committed during the act of and physical misconduct by instrument. Vanessa Sampson's tragic slaying followed a series of at least 6 brutal physical attacks committed by the defendants against girls who were known to them, including 2 who were closely related to them. As a result, on September 25, 2002, James Anthony DiVaggio and Michelle Lynn were sentenced to demise, a just punishment for their abhorrent actions. Number 2. Maureen McDermott. In 1985, Maureen McDermott, a former nurse at the medical center in Van Nuys, Los Angeles, orchestrated a plan to have her male roommate, Stephen Eldridge, slayed. McDermott, aged 37 at the time, hired her co-worker Jimmy Luna for the task, with the motive of collecting her roommate's $100,000 mortgage insurance on their co-owned house. The crime took place in April 1985 at their Van Nuys home, where Eldridge was brutally knifed 44 times. 3 months later, Luna was arrested, and during his trial, he implicated McDermott, leading to her arrest a month later. Luna agreed to plead guilty and testify against McDermott, admitting that he recruited brothers Marvin and Donnelly to assist in the slaying. The Lee brothers received immunity for their testimony. Luna, who spent 5 weeks on the witness stand, received a life imprisonment sentence without the possibility of parole. Luna testified that McDermott had promised him $50,000 to slay Eldridge, and they had made a first unsuccessful attempt before the fatal attack. Luna also claimed that, at McDermott's insistence, Eldridge's private organ was cut off after his demise to make it appear as a same-gender slaying, assuming the police would not vigorously investigate. During the trial, McDermott did not testify, but her defense lawyers argued that she had no involvement in the slaying and questioned the credibility of Luna and the Lee brothers. At her sentencing, McDermott publicly denied any connection to the slaying and criticized the prosecutor, Catherine, who was now a Los Angeles Superior Court judge, referring to her as a power-hungry woman.
This explanation was so vague and conclusory as to be meaningless. May it please the court, Lauren Collins on behalf of appellant Maureen McDermott.
Trying to select a jury, a critical step in ensuring a fair trial.
37-year-old Maureen McDermott was a former nurse being convicted and was sentenced to die in the gas chamber on June 8, 1990.
I'm not sure about for repeaters.
Number 1. Margaret Allen. On February 8, 2005, a tragic event occurred involving Margaret Allen and her friend and housekeeper, Wendy. Margaret, a 39-year-old mother, allegedly committed slaying against Wendy, strangling her with a ligature. The motive for this crime was believed to be Margaret's accusation that Wendy had stolen $2,000 from her purse. However, Wendy denied the allegation. Initially, prosecutors pursued the case against Wendy and subjected her to hours of torture, hoping to extract a confession. The medical examiner's report later revealed that Wendy had suffered nearly a dozen blows to her face and body. In addition to the physical misuse and abuse, Margaret reportedly put her feet on Wendy's neck and poured bleach on her face, neck, and head. This prolonged torture ultimately led to Wendy's demise. Margaret, along with Quentin Alley and Martha's roommate James Martin, then buried Wendy's body in a shallow grave 3 days after the assassination. During the trial, Quentin Alley, Margaret's nephew and Martha's roommate, testified against his aunt and received a 15-year prison sentence. He claimed that he feared Margaret, describing her as a violent person known to carry a gun. Quentin stated that, out of fear, he complied with Margaret's instructions to bind Wendy's legs with a belt and hold her hands to prevent her from escaping. Following the trial on May 19, 2011, Margaret was sentenced to demise for her involvement in the slaying. As of now, she's waiting ending on ending row, and in my opinion, considering the brutal nature of the crime and the immense pain inflicted upon the victim before her demise, Margaret's sentence is justified. The details of this case demonstrate the extreme violence and disregard for human life exhibited by the perpetrator. And that's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time at the next one.